Hi everyone and welcome. I'm going to be doing a hand editing tutorial today, and if you're not a fan of very long tutorials, then you're probably not in the right place. So let's get started. I'm going to start off with my image already open in Photoshop, and I'm going to open curves, and I'm going to create a curves layer of just adding a little bit of contrast and more definition in the highlights and in the shadows. So when you do this, all you're going to do is just pull on the points, and then you'll see what it does kind of when you play with it, and then you'll find a good spot for your image. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close that because I'm happy with it. Now going into hue and saturation, we're going to go ahead and play with the colors a little bit. So what I like to do is I like to go into my reds first and then just kind of go down the list that way, and then playing with the saturation, the hue, and the lightness. Every image is going to look different, but this is what I'm doing for this one. So now with the yellows, same thing, just kind of back and forth playing, seeing what it does in the image. And that's basically what you're going to do with all these colors within the range of the hue and saturation layer. So I know I don't have that much greens, and cyans are kind of there because I can see it from the blacks. Sometimes blacks pick up a lot of cyan and a lot of blue. So you can see that once I move that hue around, it'll kind of like change it from more of a black blue to a purple. And then the magentas, those are going to be kind of like more of your lips and your cheeks and all that fun stuff. And you guys are watching me edit in real time, so I'm sorry if I make no sense while I'm editing. So this is color balance, and what color balance does is you can separate from the midtones, the shadows, and the highlights, and kind of give it a different feel that way. Again, this is just me playing around, so you don't have to do it exactly how I'm doing it. If you want to get the same kind of effect, then you can. But I mean, every image is going to be different, especially if you shot it, at a different time of day and there's different temperatures on your skin, or, in your background or anything, or if they're wearing different clothes. Like, there's so many variables. Like, do not expect to have the exact edit exactly the same. This is more just for inspiration. So when you go into the different tones, what it's going to do, it's going to go ahead and just target that area, the highlights, the shadows, or the midtones. And then once you add that on top of your other layers, it's going to keep stacking because you're doing this all manually. And you can go back and kind of fix it. And then what I'm doing here is I'm going into my black and white and I'm pulling down the reds, and it's going to make the reds darker, and I'm pulling up the yellows and it's going to make the yellows lighter. So I'm adding more contrast, and then I'm going down into luminosity, and what it's doing is it's kind of darkening a little bit of the image. And then, like I said, you can always lower the opacity on all these layers. That way you're not, if you end up not really liking one layer, like the intensity of it, then you can just lower it, see? So that helps a lot. And I turn that into soft light at the end, so it can be more more of a contrast versus how I had it on luminosity. So now going into selective color, and this is where you can kind of be a little bit more playful, and but this does affect your whole image, so you can't really choose, just the highlights, the lowlights, and I mean the highlights and the lowlights, the highlights and the shadows. Um, this is going to affect your overall image, but only in these target areas. So like in your reds, you know how like the hue and saturation kind of did that? This is what that's doing, but it's targeting like all the reds, and it's manipulating how much magenta, cyan, yellow, and how your blacks turn out. So let's say you really, really like how your reds are, so you wouldn't go ahead and tweak that, but you wanted your yellows to be more of a reddish tone, then in hue you might not get that, and so in here you'll just play around to get more of that effect. So here I'm just kind of playing with it. I'm literally playing with this whole image, like I'm just having a ball of a time. So like I said, go ahead and do you. I will do me. This is what, this is what looks good for me. So basically playing with the image. And you know what? Just a side note, you guys, if someone tells you like your image looks horrible, this isn't how colors should be, and blah blah blah, like you have, your own artistic curiosity. You want to do whatever you want, right? So, I mean, why not make blacks blue, and why not, make highlights red, and why can't you stand out of the crowd? So just do what makes you happy, whatever, floats your boat, basically. Whatever you're envisioning, go ahead and do that. And then what I just did here, going back into the photography, what I just did here was I just moved up my layer. And when you stack layers like this, your lowest layer is going to be kind of based on your upper layer. So let's say I remove the layer on top. Well, that layer is gone now, right? So if I remove a layer on the bottom, all the other layers are going to react differently because that layer that I made in the middle is no longer connected to all the other ones. So instead of stacking them like I should be, I'm actually moving them around, so it's affecting the image differently. And you'll see that if you start editing that way. So all I'm doing is I'm selecting a neutral color from the image, and then I'm trying to create a vignette kind of ish. Well, it's not really a vignette, I'm just trying to create a sun flare. And the way you do that is you use your gradient tool, and then you use the radial gradient, and then you click off reverse, and then you kind of pull it from the corner down, so it creates this kind of like spherical look. And I just did that on a new layer, and then right now I'm just doing kind of like a hazy-ish feel, kind of like a, what are they called, a sunbeam kind of feel. So I'm just selecting colors around the image, and I'm kind of just adding them in, and then I'm using soft light, which is what I used on the first one. That was kind of a sunburst flare thing, and I'm sorry, I used overlay. And just kind of adding different, feel to it, adding a little bit more light. And if you guys ever want to like add more light to your image, like this is a good way to do it, is just create a new layer and then select a color, and then just either use a brush or a gradient tool, and then just add it to the layer, and then use different blending modes. Depends on what you want and what intensity you want, because every different mode has a different intensity, and it does it differently for your image. Yeah, this video is just gonna be me rambling. Like I said, if you don't like long hand editing videos, this isn't the video for you. So with this faux flare, I'm just using it with no, like a normal blending mode, but I don't really care for it. I mean, as much as I would lower the opacity, I feel like it just takes away too much of the contrast that I want, so I'm just gonna delete it. Okay, so now I'm gonna go back into selective color, and you guys can make as many layers of like different adjustments as you want, honestly. Like Photoshop allows you to do like 1,000 things, so don't feel like if you did selective color once and you didn't really like it, then that you can't go ahead and edit it in a different layer kind of thing. So that's another good thing to know, is that you can create like a bunch of different adjustments within like different adjustments. So I only use that on her hair to kind of get back the black so it wouldn't be so blue. And then I'm just gonna rename this color. So far we've just done a bunch of adjustments, and yours will look different than mine, but this is before and after. And then that's with curves. Curves just kind of made it pop, which is why I always like doing it first, just to get like a nice base going. So again, I'm going to create a snapshot. That way if we want to go back and tweak it, we can. And this is prior to flattening it. So that way you can still tweak it, because if you flatten it and then take a snapshot, you can't really do much. I mean, you just have the snapshot of you flattening it. You can't really go back and re-edit it. And then, oh yeah, in curves, when you open it, you can actually change, your range of color here. So when you go down to the second drop-down menu, you can select either the red, the green, or the blues, and then you can tweak those variables. And what it does is you can remove, like if your picture is like way too red and you want to make it more like on the greener side, that's a cool like way to like just do it really fast. And then depends on where you like pull on the curve, then it'll affect different parts of your image. So that kind of gave it a vintage feel. And then you can pull down the greens to get more magenta, or pull up the greens to get more green. It's just, basically just, you don't have to be a color scientist to know like the opposite of colors. So this is also a really good way of adding more contrast into your image. Since it is a curves layer, it's going to separate your image a little bit more. By that I mean it's going to pull on your highlights, your shadows, and your exposure overall. So you can keep playing that way. And then again, like we did before, we're going to take a snapshot before we flatten. And then let's see where we've been. So we've been there, and then we're right here right now. So that's before and after of just that. And we're gonna go ahead and just lower that opacity just a little bit. Alright, that looks good. And then just flatten. Okay, creating a new layer. And let's name this highlights. And then we're going to go change our blending mode to soft light and make sure we have a white, our foreground color is white, see there? And then we're going to make sure the opacity is really low. And again, if you see my other videos, you know that I work with a Wacom tablet. And so I'm using a pen tool, and what that does is it modifies to the pressure I put on the pad. And if you're interested in those, you should definitely check them out. They are very, very useful, and not just for, retouching and all that. They are very useful for just, basically anything that you do in Photoshop. It's so much easier. It's like, it's literally like using a pen and a pad, it makes painting so much easier. Okay, so I'm doing this on her eyes, on the inner corners, on, her highlight points, the nose, anywhere that the light already hit. I'm just intensifying that, especially on parts that I want, lighter, that the light didn't hit, I want those points. But generally speaking, girls, you're gonna understand this more than guys, just because girls tend to do their makeup. I know guys do their makeup too. Totally cool. Not saying anything. I'm just saying that, girls do it more often. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna kind of like contour your face with this. So you're gonna add highlights and kind of add more dimension to the face, more to the body. And then obviously after this we're gonna add shadows, but right now we're just working with highlights, and a little goes a long way. So that's why I'm only using like 10 opacity, and you can see like how much that already did. And then with another layer, I'm gonna name this like, you can name it whatever you want. I'm just gonna name it shadows. And then use your black brush, and then soft light again. Use the black brush. So you're gonna hit X on your keyboard, or you can just switch it there and then make sure it's on black and then make sure your opacity is really low. What I like to do is I like to increase my opacity when I'm working with blacks, just because I like my blacks really intense, and then I can go ahead and lower it like as the opacity overall. And then just to clarify again, I'm using a pressure sensitive pen, so it's not 100% like 23% opacity on every stroke I'm doing. It's, variable pressure, so I can be like 5% and then I can be like 15 and then I could be the full 23. Depends on how much pressure I put on the pen and the pad. So that's why I really like those, because you're not like going back and forth, like, oh, I need 5% here, I need 10% over here. It's really easy and it's really, really, really good to use. And then I'm just going back and forth to like little pieces that I feel like I missed. And with the shadows, obviously, just do the same as the highlights. Target the shadows of the natural shadows of the image. Unless you want to go ahead and kind of use it to darken any areas that you feel are too light. So you can see that's what we've done. And it just adds like this really nice like depth to your image. So I'm going to go ahead and rename this to contour, even though I'm misspelling everything right now. Just ignore it. And this is what we've done. See, kind of like adds more dimension. And again, this is not because she's, she's not perfect or whatever. It just adds more like definition. Like photographs, sometimes they come out flat, and this one so happened to come out flat. And especially if you're shooting from like against the sun. But I mean, if you don't shoot against the sun, you don't get this pretty little halo around their hair. So I really like shooting against the sun for that reason. Okay, but anyways, so this is where we are again, and then I'm gonna go ahead and create a snapshot of that and then flatten. And let's see, what else can we do? Let's duplicate our layer, and I'm gonna use the dodge and burn tool. So the little hand with the circle is a dodge and burn, and that one's for burning. Sorry, I had to double check. So we're gonna actually use a dodge tool because we're gonna go ahead and fix her eyes. Well, fix is not the right word. Lighten her eyes. And we're gonna go really dramatic so we can just lower the opacity on it. And then let's use the burn tool and kind of go around like her, go on her pupil, around her iris, like her like little colored part, and her lash line. Basically just intensifying the blacks in her eye. There we go. I hope my rambling isn't too distracting. I mean, you guys can like literally turn off the volume in this video if you don't want to hear me ramble. As you can see, it's very late today. Alright, so that's what we've done with our eyes, just using the dodge and burn tool. And I'm going to lower that opacity a little bit. Just, see, that's like 100%. That's a little too intense for my taste. Again, portraits, little goes a long way. And then we're going to flatten. And we're going to go ahead and sharpen. So my favorite way to sharpen is to go to duplicate your layer. Go to filter. And let's see what Unsharp Mask does. So an unsharp mask is going to be like kind of like you choose the radius and how much sharpness you want. And then what I like to do also is to put a layer mask on that. And the way to do that is you just select the little layer mask while clicking on it. And then I invert this. Sorry, it keeps inverting my actual picture. And it created a vector mask, that's why. Okay, so yeah, just adding a layer mask there. And then go ahead and paint that on to the parts that you want sharp. And don't do what I just did, which was I tried to paint it on with my burn tool. You have to switch back into the paintbrush. And then again, like my other tutorials where I've shown you guys how I sharpen, it's just lash line, eye, inner corner, eyebrows, lips, and then a little bit of the nose, and then sometimes hair. Inner corners are definitely a must for me. I feel like it makes it pop like a lot. Like I don't know if you guys see, like for those that are like YouTube junkies that like makeup tutorials, like most of the time you put like a pretty intense highlight inside your inner corners to make you look like all awake. So I like to like add a little bit of fake makeup, I guess, and intensify that with sharpening. Okay, so let's see what that does. So that's a little bit of sharpness, like not like too way over the top. So let's just flatten that. And let's zoom out and see where we are. So let's take a snapshot, go here and then here. See, I mean, that did a lot of stuff. And we all did that with our hands. We didn't use any actions or anything. Yeah, so let's go back to the flattened part. And I think I'm going to add I don't know, guys, warming filter? Okay, so you guys have filters in Photoshop. You can add a warming filter, a cooling filter, different things. It's just an easy way to get like warmth in your image. I like to use them. They're nice and, convenient. So, just gonna see how that looks. I toggle a lot. I go like on and off, just to like make sure I like it. So let's take another snapshot from there to there. Let's add a little bit more pizzazz. So, and this is like the point of editing where you're like, I don't know, what should I do? What should I do? There's like a million things you can do, so it's kind of hard. But remember, do whatever you feel like your image needs. You're in control. So I'm gonna duplicate my layer, and I'm gonna duplicate it twice, and I'm turning off the top layer because we're gonna create a frequency separation. So what I'm doing is I'm using filter, blur, and then Gaussian blur, and then I'm selecting a blur amount that kind of just blurs the colors a little bit together without overdoing it. And then I'm turning back on the top layer and selecting it, and then we're gonna go to a pie image, and then we're gonna make sure that the layer is selected on layer 1, and then invert and make sure blending is on add and scale is to 2, and it looks like, just like a gray outline of your image. I have another video that goes more in depth of how to do this. And then the first layer, you're going to go in and put that onto linear light. And it should look exactly the same as you left it, but like that's our goal. For not to look like too different. because we're going to actually work onto the image. And you'll see what I mean right now. So this one, we're just going to go ahead and, this is the way I do it. There's like 1,000 ways to do it. This is the way I like to do it. There's different videos on YouTube where you can do it, you know. So what I do is I turn off my details layer, which is that gray one. And then I select colors from the image with my brush tool, and then selecting by pressing the Alt button on my keyboard, and it'll pop up like the dropper tool, and then I select like a color from around there, and then I'll brush it on to kind of remove any funky colors or any, you know, super shadow casting. And that first layer that we have there, the layer 1, it's gonna create only it's only gonna work on, you know, the colors. It's not actually gonna remove detail or anything. So all our detail is safe, and that's all saved onto the gray layer that we have on top, which is layer 1 copy. And you'll see right now that once I turn it on, like all our detail will still be there. And then go around your image and just kind of fix any spots that you feel like are a little weird. Not saying she's weird, guys. I'm just saying, like, it's the shadows. Like, they always get me. Natural light photographers know this. Like, you get really weird shadows sometimes. You can't really control how, you know, the light, you can't bend light. I mean, especially if you don't have a reflector, right? So that's all I'm doing. I'm just kind of fixing her arm just because it looked a little too dark compared to the rest of her body, since we did all that like sun flare, well, the sun flow flare. And so that's what I'm going to fix here. Okay, so see how I turn on the details layer and it's still like all the details still there? And the reason why I turn off the details is just so I can just see like colors, so I don't look at the, like, you know, like, oh, this looks funky. And all I'm doing in the details layer is I am literally just like cloning, like just cloning like the skin texture over. So, you know, I don't like this skin texture, I like this skin texture, so the one I like cloning it onto the others, you know. It's like how you would use your clone tool, basically, but now for just texture. And it doesn't modify colors at all, it just modifies the texture. Hence the frequency separation part. Okay, so let's see, what has that done? See how it kind of like took away all that awkwardness? I don't know, it felt awkward to me. So it kind of just like blends more with the image. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that, but I'm just gonna invert it and then take it away from any like super dramatic areas that I didn't want it. And the exact way that I'm doing is that I inverted it, so it's all gone. And I'm just gonna brush it on to the spots necessary, so it's not, you know, like on her face or anything, or modifying her face, or losing detail, or anything weird. I'm using 100% opacity. See, doesn't that look much cleaner now? Alright, let's flatten. And guys, we are done. We have our final image, so just save it, and that's it. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, which was kind of more of me just talking and blurbing. Alright, so if you like these kind of videos, just go ahead and subscribe to my channel and like it. And I will see you guys very soon. Bye!